The clever trench-digging strategy of Brazilian farmers that leaves wild boars helpless. Have you ever imagined that? Amid the peaceful fields of Brazil, a silent war is taking place, where the enemy isn't pests or drought, but wild boars. These seemingly harmless creatures can devastate an entire field overnight, turning months of hard work into nothing. To deal with them, Brazilian farmers came up with a defense strategy that's both simple and bold: digging trenches to block wild boars. But what makes such a primitive-sounding method so effective that it has drawn attention from across the agricultural world? Let's uncover the secret behind the ingenious trench-digging strategy of Brazilian farmers, where humans and nature are engaged in a fierce yet intelligent and creative battle for survival. In many rural regions of Brazil, wild boars have become a true nightmare for farmers. In just one night, a herd can destroy an entire field. They move in groups of dozens, trampling everything in their path, crushing corn, uprooting cassava, knocking down sugarcane, even attacking livestock and spreading disease. As a result, farmers can lose thousands of dollars in just one night. They have tried everything, from electric fences and traps to chemicals, but almost nothing worked. Their crops were destroyed again and again, leaving them exhausted and hopeless. So they turned to a solution that seemed crude but proved surprisingly effective: digging deep and wide trenches around their farmland. When wild boars try to invade, they immediately face a trench blocking their path, too wide to jump over and too steep to climb. They easily fall in and have no way to escape. At first, this idea was considered extreme and labor-intensive, but the results left everyone astonished. The number of wild boars invading the farms has dropped sharply, and many farmlands are now safer than ever. In some areas, these trenches are so deep and wide that they look like real defensive fortifications. But for Brazilian farmers, this is the most practical way to protect their future harvests. No electric fences, no weapons, just deep trenches across the fields. Yet they've managed to stop one of the most destructive creatures in rural Brazil. Who would have thought that, in an age of advanced technology, such a simple method could become the smartest and most effective shield for farmers? Wild boars are not just a nuisance. They're a serious threat to Brazil's agriculture. They move in herds, attack in an organized manner, and destroy with astonishing coordination in a single night. They can wipe out the results of months of labor: corn, cassava, sugarcane. Nothing escapes their destruction. Even worse, wild boars are carriers of dangerous diseases, posing risks not only to livestock but also to humans in many southern and southeastern regions of Brazil. In just one night, wild boar raids can cause damage worth thousands of dollars. Tired of constantly repairing the aftermath, many farmers decided to act early, proactively digging defensive trenches to stop the boars before it's too late. Since then, animal defense systems have started appearing more and more across rural areas. These trenches are usually 1 to 1.5 meters deep and over a meter wide, with steep sides that make it almost impossible for wild boars to escape once they fall in. For large farms, digging trenches is a real challenge, yet many farmers still don't hesitate to dig for kilometers around their entire land. Of course, it's not an easy task. It requires heavy machinery, skilled workers, fuel, and a lot of time, but in return, they gain an extremely effective layer of protection. Wild boars can't break through. They either fall into the trenches or simply give up and leave. However, some farmers worry that if this method becomes widespread, the boars might learn to avoid the trenches or move to unprotected areas. Therefore, for long-term effectiveness, these defensive trenches must be built in a coordinated, large-scale system, not just as isolated efforts. One major advantage of this solution is its sustainability and eco-friendliness. No electricity, no metal fences, no toxic chemicals, just silent trenches lying there, serving as natural defensive walls, quiet, yet incredibly solid. They work effectively without noise, without harming other animals, and require virtually no maintenance. Overall, this approach seems nearly perfect, natural, efficient, and sustainable. Yet, like every method, it comes with a price. To build such trenches, farmers need heavy machinery, skilled labor, fuel, and a great deal of time. Especially for large-scale farms or areas with rocky terrain, construction becomes costly and can take many days. A real challenge for anyone trying to apply this method. Digging a trench isn't as simple as grabbing a shovel and getting to work. It's a serious investment that requires clear planning in terms of manpower and finances. In many regions, the average cost per meter of trench can exceed $2. That number may sound small at first, but if a farm's perimeter stretches 5, 12, or even 20 kilometers, the total cost can quickly rise to tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's only the initial expense. In the long run, maintenance costs are also significant in areas with high rainfall. Erosion can easily fill the trenches with mud, clogging them or turning them into stagnant water pools. A once solid defensive structure can quickly become a useless muddy pit if not regularly maintained in rocky regions. The work becomes even more difficult and expensive, requiring heavy machinery and much longer construction times. Therefore, a proper drainage system is essential, including water channels, outlets, and retaining walls, to help maintain the trench's depth, slope, and stability throughout the year, especially during the rainy season. Beyond the technical aspects, safety is also crucial. If not properly marked and signposted, these deep trenches can become dangerous traps for both humans and animals. In fact, there have been unfortunate accidents. Machines falling into trenches, workers slipping at night, or trucks getting stuck when trying to cross areas without proper passageways. Therefore, designing safe passageways and placing visible warning signs in key locations is absolutely necessary. The best approach is to avoid digging trenches too close to areas with heavy human or vehicle traffic. In places where crossings are unavoidable, small bridges or reinforced passageways should be built to ensure continuous, safe, and convenient movement for both people and vehicles. Another important factor that many overlook is the terrain. The trench digging method works best on flat or gently sloping land. However, when applied in mountainous regions, rocky areas, or deep forest zones, things become far more complicated. Construction under such conditions requires much more labor, specialized machinery, and significantly higher costs. Not only is it expensive, but the effectiveness may not match the level of investment, forcing many farmers to think carefully before starting such a project. And the problems don't end with wild boars. In fact, many other destructive animals also cause serious trouble for farmers. One of the most notable is the hybrid wild Java pig, a crossbreed between wild boars and domestic pigs. These hybrids carry the strength of wild boars combined with the endurance and adaptability of domestic pigs, making them larger, more aggressive, and far more destructive than ordinary wild boars. But that's still not all. Some native species, such as the South American peccary, are equally dangerous. They move in herds, dozens of them charging across the fields, like a storm, destroying everything in their path: corn, sugarcane, peanuts, cassava. Nothing is safe in many regions. Such attacks happen so often that they have become a true nightmare for Brazilian farmers. And it's not just Brazil. The wild boar problem has now spread to many other parts of the world. In the United States, authorities in several states have had to deploy helicopters to snipe wild boar herds from the air in an effort to prevent crop damage. Meanwhile, in Australia, people set traps and use specially trained hunting dogs to drive the animals away from agricultural areas. However, these measures are extremely costly and have significant negative impacts on the ecological environment. They only address the symptoms, while the root problem, the rapid reproduction and remarkable adaptability of these species, remains an unsolved challenge for farmers worldwide. In this context, the trench digging solution in Brazil is considered one of the few methods that is cost-effective, efficient, and environmentally friendly, especially in the state of São Paulo, the region most heavily affected. There have been reports of wild boar herds numbering over 200 appearing in a single night. Imagine, in the darkness, a massive herd of wild beasts charging across the fields. The sound of breaking plants, the crack of branches, soil, and dust flying everywhere, and by morning, the entire area reduced to a wasteland. That's why more and more farmers are choosing proactive defense methods. Today, large trenches have become natural walls, protecting modern farms from the destruction caused by wild animals. Yet, wild boars are not the only threat. Another creature that causes serious damage is the giant water rat. At first glance, they seem harmless, resting peacefully by the riverbanks, but out in the fields, they are a true menace. Giant water rats are highly territorial. Once they find a food source, they settle and gnaw relentlessly, especially during the early stages of crop growth when plants are most vulnerable. The consequences appear right at the beginning of the season. Seedlings die, the soil is left bare, and fields quickly turn into breeding grounds for weeds. Pests and termites, from what seem like small initial damages, can quickly spread their consequences, seriously affecting the entire farming cycle. That's why farmers must always stay one step ahead of every potential threat, because in the world of agriculture, being late by even one night can mean losing an entire season's harvest. So next time you see a field surrounded by deep trenches that look like wartime fortifications, don't rush to laugh or be surprised. What you are seeing is not just a primitive defensive measure, but the result of persistence, creativity, and determination, of farmers silently fighting to protect what's most precious to them: their crops, their land, and their future. Next, let's explore how Texas farmers deal with millions of wild boars attacking their cornfields. To face the threat. Many small towns in America have formed volunteer hunting teams operating at night. They divide shifts, assign patrol zones, and use GPS tracking to share real-time data. They do not hunt for money but out of responsibility to their community and the homeland they love. However, not everyone supports hunting. Some animal protection groups believe that instead of killing, humans should find biological solutions to control population growth. They raise an important question. Are wild boars truly destructive or just acting on their instinct to survive? And where lies the boundary between population control and excessive slaughter? Today, hunting wild boars is no longer a lonely, risky act. Thanks to motion sensors, phone alerts, heat maps, and artificial intelligence, farmers can detect and stop wild boars before they destroy the fields. One autumn night, John climbed his watchtower. On the screen, the dark shadows of wild boars were moving closer. He tightened his grip, pulled the trigger once, then again. That night, he saved his land from destruction. But as dawn came, he knew the war wasn't over. Nature isn't cruel, it's indifferent. The boars don't know they're causing harm. They're only trying to live to coexist with nature. Humans must unite technology, courage, and awareness. Guided by science and ethics, hunting becomes not violence but a way to protect the fragile balance of life. In Australia, invaders are not only wild boars. Feral goats are also among the most dangerous invasive species. Originally, they were brought to Australia by European settlers in the 18th century for milk and meat. But once released into the wild, they reproduced rapidly and began destroying the native ecosystem. Unlike wild boars, feral goats can climb and feed on both low and high vegetation. They devastate grasslands, cause soil erosion, and compete for food with native species such as possums, rats, and wallabies. The Australian government spends millions of dollars each year to control feral goats, through hunting, trapping, and even aerial shooting. However, goat hunting has also created new economic opportunities in certain tourism regions. Legal hunting has been developed as a way to both control populations and generate income for local communities. Goat meat is highly valued for its firm texture and low fat, making it popular in the Middle East and Asia, while goat hides are used in the fashion and handicraft industries. In the battle against invasive species like wild boars and feral goats, local people, especially farmers, hunters, and indigenous communities, form the first line of defense. They are not only the ones who suffer direct damage but also those who possess practical experience and deep local knowledge. In Australia, indigenous communities play a crucial role in monitoring and managing feral goats by combining traditional knowledge with modern technology. Regular hunting campaigns are organized not only to protect the land but also to contribute to long-term ecosystem restoration. Yet one final question remains. Can humanity ever completely eliminate invasive species like wild boars or feral goats? The answer is likely no, at least not in the near future. Instead of trying to eradicate them entirely, many experts believe the goal should be sustainable balance. A balance achieved through humane population control, economic utilization of legal hunting, and ecological recovery via reforestation, water protection, and buffer zones for native wildlife. Because in the end, whether wild boars or feral goats, they are the consequences of human interference and environmental change. The real solution doesn't lie in destruction, but in how we learn to live harmoniously and responsibly with nature. Nature is ever-changing, and humans can never fully control it. Wild boars and feral goats don't know the boundaries of farmland, nor understand the value of a harvest. They simply exist, reproduce, and sometimes become disasters. The farmer's struggle is not only against the land, weather, or pests, but also against forces that seem beyond human control. Yet, throughout this journey, we witness resilience, creativity, and unconditional love for Mother Nature. From Texas to the remote lands of Australia, every footprint on the soil stands as proof of an effort, not to conquer nature, but to coexist with it in a sustainable and deeply human way. What do you think about these remarkable stories in the ongoing battle for survival between humans and nature? If you enjoy exploring unique and surprising agricultural journeys like this, don't forget to subscribe to Hands of America, discover so you won't miss any exciting upcoming videos. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.